Hey everybody, so today we're talking about the super new moon, solar eclipse in Cancer on the 12th of August 2026. The crisis that forces a new emotional infrastructure, routines, boundaries, foundations, core, new ways of doing things, right? And it exposes our wound with the feminine energy, the mother wound, and the lies that we have been calling our safety net, our comfort zone, are obliterated, destroyed, so we can finally build something real, So yes, your emotional world is crumbling during this super new moon solar eclipse in Cancer, and that's actually the point, The Cancer eclipse isn't breaking you, it's demolishing, knocking down, wiping out the foundations, the core destructive habits that you built to survive childhood, and they were never meant to support your actual adult life, So the key message of this super new moon solar eclipse in Cancer is rebuild your life for yourself this time to support your actual needs, not your performance. Give up people pleasing everyone, and stop ignoring your actual needs. So I'm Imani, your holistic astrological karmic life coach, and if you wanted the super short version, that was it. Well, if you want a bit more of a summary, listen on for the next 10 to 15 minutes and I'm going to give it to you quick, and then of course I'm going to go layer by layer because that's what I do best, right? Because I believe that repetition, going down into the layers, is how we get the message, right? So this is a super new moon total solar eclipse on the 12th of August 2026 that's happening. Well, the new moon is exact at 1837 British summertime, right? And the solar eclipse is exact at 1846 British summertime. So 6:37 to 6:46 p.m. is when it's happening, right? In the UK, that is. Then Pacific time, the new moon's at 10:37 a.m. and the eclipse is at its maximum energy at 10:46 a.m. Mountain time, new moon 11:37 a.m. max eclipse time at 11:46 a.m. Central time, new moon is at 12:37 p.m. and the max eclipse is 12:46 p.m. Eastern time 1:37 new moon time and the maximum is at 1:46 p.m. Central European time it's at 7:37 p.m. and the max eclipse is at 7:46. Indian Standard Time it's at 11:07 p.m. and the max eclipse time is at 11:16 p.m. All of this on the 12th of August. And then in Australia, the new moon is at 3:37 a.m. and the eclipse is at its max at 3:46 a.m. on the 13th of August, right? So if we're just going to take universal time, right? The partial eclipse begins at 3:34 and then the total eclipse is at 5:02 universal UTC time. So the greatest eclipse is at 5:45 UTC time. It ends at 6:30 UTC time, and that's the total eclipse ending, and the partial eclipse energy ends at 7:57 p.m. Yeah, universal time, right? So have you got that? You still with me? So in the UK, ultimately it's going to start at 6:17 p.m. and end at 8:06, so it's happening for an hour and 49 minutes, and the best place to be if you can get there is Land's End, all the way down in Cornwall to view it. So it's going to go across Arctic Russia, Greenland, Iceland, northern Spain, Portugal and the Balearic Islands, right? But we will get some of it in the UK, and in other places of the world you'll get it in different degrees. So the moon and the sun are at the 26th degree of Cancer in the Elysian, that's Sacropada 3, and I'm going to go deeper into the Vedic Layer and explain what all that means. The Sabian symbol for the 26th degree of Cancer is guests are reading in the library of a luxurious home, and it's near the South Node in Leo, but it's actually conjunct Jupiter, which is combust because it's 10 degrees away from the sun, so I'm going to give you all that good stuff. And it's also a stellium between Mercury, Jupiter and Hygeia conjuncting Cancer, but Jupiter's also conjunct in combust the sun and conjunct by a wide degree orb, 10 degree traditional for conjunction, but modern 8 degrees. So yeah, Jupiter's influencing it, and I'm going to tell you all about what that means. So then we've got the sun and the moon making a semi-square to Venus as well at the time of this super new moon solar eclipse in Cancer. The sun and the moon trining Saturn, sun and the moon making a sestus square to Neptune, the sun and the moon making a square to the midheaven, the sun and the moon making a biquintile to the ascendant, and the trine to Pallas, Black Moon Lilith and Vista. So a lot is going on, right? And then we've also got retrogrades happening, right? So we've got 4 retrogrades active during this eclipse: Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn and Chiron all retrograde. So this isn't about forward motion, it's about deep internal reset, reworking before you can move forward with this energy. The eclipse plants the seeds, but the retrograde says those seeds need to germinate, begin to grow underground for months before they sprout. And eclipse energy always lasts us for 6 months, so right up until the next eclipse pair in February, March 2027. So Jupiter is retrograde in Cancer, so our emotional growth must happen internally before it can manifest externally, and we can't perform growth. We have to have a genuine deepening of our emotional capacity and ability by learning to work with and heal and live with our emotional, spiritual and psychological wounds. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn wants us to reclaim our professional power by healing the authority wound and any wounds that we've got around, standing up for ourselves and our self-empowerment, especially in our career, right? And how we were mothered directly affects our relationship with bosses and leadership, or our, how we use our feminine energy affects that. And Neptune and Saturn are both retrograde in Pisces. Neptune's allowing us to see through our own illusions and lies about where we are, being romanticizing our life, our toxic relationships, toxic habits, and the ways we call codependency love, and we romanticize doing harm to ourselves, right? And to get clarity, we have to be brutally honest with ourselves now about what's draining our energy. Saturn in Pisces retrograde allows us to build internal psychological structures, routines, processes first before, doing it on the external level, creating internal scaffolding, thought patterns, understanding that holds our emotional, spiritual and psychological truths without performing toughness. So the eclipse, the 12th of August is where we plant the seeds of change, write them down, voice note them. On the 16th of October, Pluto's going direct, so this allows us to reclaim our power visibly through our actions, and take the practical actions that we need to end toxic habits and relationships. On the 10th of December, Saturn goes direct, so this allows us to really, firm up our structures, routines and boundaries. And on the 12th of December, Neptune goes direct, so our clarity can return because we may be a bit foggy while Neptune's retrograde. And on the 6th of January, Chiron goes direct, so we can integrate our psychological, emotional and spiritual wounds more by then. So we're looking at a 7-month birthing and gestation development period from the eclipse to final emergence, final practices in actually reclaiming ourselves. But that doesn't mean we just start in 7 months. We take small steps, and then within 7 months we're going to totally see the fruits of our labour, our hard work, if we're willing to work towards our liberation, right, from our wounds with our feminine energy. Don't rush it, don't force visibility before the roots are deep. Trust the underground work. This eclipse rips away the emotional support, temporary structures, routines and boundaries that you've been calling home, and demands you build something that can actually hold you, right? So ultimately, what's brilliant about this eclipse is the 3 grand trines creating a safety net of support, So Saturn's trine to the eclipse, the sun and the moon, means that any new habits, foundations that we build will hold. And Paddy's trine this eclipse means that strategic wisdom is guiding us as we make these changes. And Vista and Lilith trining these special asteroids, right, means that our rage and our devotion, our commitment are working together for once, so we can use our anger, maybe anger with the wounds that come up around our mother, feminine energy, primary caregiver, or the ways that we hurt ourselves emotionally, spiritually, or psychologically, or allow anyone else to do so, right? But with Vista and Lilith working together, trining nice, easy, flowing energy, it's helping us to sort of direct our rage constructively to help us build life-giving habits that can, make us centered again. But the 2 T-squares create relentless pressure. The Venus semi-square, Neptune sexti-square tension blur our boundaries when we need clarity, and the Midhaven square forces a career public judgment, reckoning, honest accounting, while we're still emotionally raw, so we may say things that we don't mean to say and do things that we regret. So we just have to try and be as stable as we can. But I'm going to talk about these grand trines and T-squares in more depth later. This is just a summary for use that like it in 15-10 minutes. So the best use of this energy is to plant seeds for the emotional home you actually deserve. Start therapy or commit to a personal development program that you stick to. Have the conversations with yourself and others that you've been avoiding. Set the boundaries that terrify you. Build structures, routines and boundaries around your softness instead of performing toughness to hide it, right? So the solar eclipse in Cancer isn't asking you to release anything. That's the lunar eclipse job, right? A solar eclipse plants the seeds of new beginnings, new habits, new thoughts, beginning cycles. It opens, portals, doorways that you can't close again. And this one's a total solar eclipse, super new moon, right? So the moon completely blocks the sun's light for 3 crucial minutes. So symbolically, this means our emotional body, the moon, is temporarily blocked and overpowered by our conscious identity, the sun. And in that darkness, something new can be conceived, created, begun, birth, and Cancer, is the mother of the zodiac, not the soft, cuddly, bake your cookies version of mothering, the fierce, protective, I will destroy anything that threatens my young type of mothering, right? The kind that nourishes, feeds, sustains, but also knows when to push the baby bird, the fledgling, the child out of the nest, out of the home, because staying safe is sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do. And this eclipse, it's combusts Jupiter, but it also sits near the moon's south node in Leo, and that changes everything. The south node is where you release, where old patterns come up for final processing before you let them go. And the south node in Leo is the releasing of the performance of specialness, the need to be the one, the addiction to external validation, approval from others, and the exhausting burnout maintenance of an image that never quite feels like you because you're just doing it to stay popular, get likes and social media and all of that. So the eclipse, sun and moon sit at 26 degrees of Cancer, deep in the serpent's embrace of Elisa's Nakshatra, and that's the symbology of Elisa, the serpent. And we'll get into Elisa energy, Nakshatra, part of 3 later. But know this, serpents shed skin, they let go of skin, they let go of the old to sow the new. They don't gradually molt, lose feathers and fur. They split open and crawl out, leaving the old skin behind in one piece. And that's this eclipse, the splitting open, the crawling out, the leaving behind of something that fit you once but doesn't anymore. Jupiter and Hygeia are right there with the eclipse in Cancer, forming a 3-body stellium, a cluster of planets with Mercury hovering nearby. Jupiter expands whatever it touches in Cancer. That's emotional capacity, protective instincts, and the ability to mother yourself and others. And Hygeia brings health consciousness, particularly mental health. And this stellium says your emotional well-being, your state of being well is your health, not separate from it. It is it, right? So your nervous system, your gut, your immune responses all tracking your emotional reality. And then Cancer does its thing, and then the moon moves into Leo at 1:37 a.m. on the 13th of August. So that's less than 7 hours after the eclipse, and that's significant. The eclipse cracks you open in Cancer, the private, internal, the feeling energy. Then as the moon goes into Leo, it demands that you take what cracked open and do something with it publicly or creatively, but boldly, being brave, no more hiding in the nest. That transition from Cancer to Leo is important. The eclipse cracks you open. The Leo sign change says, now show people what's inside. But of course, the right people, show yourself what's inside, do something creative. The vulnerability, the openness to being hurt becomes visible. The wound becomes art. The private revelation, the moment of seeing truth, becomes your public testimony, right? So in terms of the astrological dance, what actually happens during the solar eclipse? Well, let's break it down proper, with no jargon, no gatekeeping. The moon, which in astrology is our emotional body, our instinctive, automatic, gut level self, the part that reacts before thinking, moves between the earth and the sun. For a few minutes, the moon's shadow falls on the earth, daylight vanishes, animals behave strangely and humans can too, and the temperature drops, the world holds its breath, and in a regular new moon, the sun and the moon meet up, have a quiet conversation and plant a seed, business as usual, but in a super moon solar eclipse, that meeting is louder, right? Because it's louder because it's a solar eclipse, and it's even more louder because it's a super new moon, right? So the moon doesn't just align with the sun, it blocks it entirely. Super moons mean that we're going to feel this energy 30% more stronger because the moon's closer to the earth, even though it's darker, right? So our emotional truth, moon, temporary eclipses are conscious identity, narrative story represented by the sun, and the emotional truth is the moon, right? And what you feel overpowers what you think you should feel right now. The unconscious, your hidden mind, briefly runs the show, and this one's a super moon too, as I said, which means the moon is closer to earth than usual, bigger, louder, more intense, and the emotional impact isn't subtle, it's visceral. You will feel it in the body immediately, unavoidably, and the sun's energy in this eclipse is the conscious self, your identity, your purpose, your this is who I am story, and the moon energy here is raw, unprocessed feeling, the body. And in Cancer, the moon is at its maximum power because Cancer is the moon's home sign after all. So the moon isn't visiting Cancer, it's ruling from its throne. And this matters because the astronomical mechanics mirror the psychological processes. So perigee is the closest point to the Earth supermoon. The moon's proximity, closeness, creates a gravitational intensity that affects, the tides, the bodies of water, and yes, human emotional states, So we all can be a bit moodier than normal. So the totality, the complete blocking of the sun's light, where it's obscured, it's hidden, represents moments when your usual coping mechanisms, ways of handling stress stop working, and you're forced to feel what you've been avoiding, whether you want to or not. And for some of you, it may just come out impulsively because you may try and hide it, but this energy can make things more forceful and more harder to hide, and your face can show what you're trying to conceal with your words. And the thing about Cancer that we can often overlook is it isn't just a soft emotional sign. It's cardinal, right? It's a cardinal water sign. It's fiercely protective. It's a doing energy. Cancer will flood the whole house just to put out the fire. That's like in a bin. And Cancer will sacrifice, give up something valuable, everything, to keep its people safe, even if safe means emotionally stunted, stopped from growing, and, kept small in the comfort zone. So this is where Cancer gets its negative connotations, meanings from, and being a bit too emotional, moody and controlling, right? So this eclipse asks, what are you protecting, and is it actually serving you, So now I'm going to talk about the wound beneath the wound, right? Because we have the wound, but there's wounds beneath that, right? So this eclipse actually touches that wound, not metaphorically but specifically, the mother wound, the wound that we can all have with feminine energy. In the UK, we have been brought up, my generation, that emotions are weakness, and that has caused so many problems that we're seeing played out in the world. And it's not just my generation, it's been going on for generations, right? But we're becoming more open on how our emotions matter, and that emotional expression is not a weakness, right? So the mother wound is not, I had a difficult relationship with my mother in a general sense. It's the specific ways your primary caregivers' unprocessed trauma became your inherited, passed down nervous system. And we can say this on a national level, the cultures we were brought up in, the religions and all of that, how all of that has been passed down and become our trauma, right? Which we just keep on passing down. So the attachment patterns, how we connect, were formed before we had language, right? And the decision you may have made at 3 years old about whether the world was safe, and that decision is now, running your adult life and relationships without your conscious awareness, right? So this eclipse can activate questions like, what did you learn about love from someone who didn't know how to love themselves? Because really, a lot of the time, we are taught things by people who didn't have the skills or didn't have the follow through. My thing is picking sense out of nonsense, because a lot of the time I notice with the people around me, they talk a good game. We all can talk a good game, right? But actually, I will learn to speak one day. Putting things into practice, that's when we all can go a bit crazy and off the Richter, right? And say things and say we are things that we're actually not, and our actions show who we are, right? So also we can ask, what did you learn about safety from someone who was terrified and lived in fear? And what did you learn about emotional expression from someone who was punished for having feelings and therefore punished you? And this is not to validate your trauma or to bypass the pain they cause, but to explain it, right? So the codependency pattern isn't just I'm too evolved in your life, it's a nervous system adaptation. It's I can't regulate, manage my own emotional state without monitoring yours. So your mood determines my mood. I feel responsible for emotions I didn't cause and can't control. I give until I am empty because empty feels familiar. Does that sound familiar? And this eclipse doesn't just illuminate, light up codependency. It can bring up feelings about the cost, the exhaustion, the burnout, the resentment. You're not allowed to have the smallness that required you to keep others comfortable, the eraser, disappearing of your needs in service of someone else's feelings, So the enmeshment wound, the codependency wound, enmeshment, merging together, is love without boundaries. It's I don't know where I end and you begin. Your pain is my pain, but also my identity. And separating from you feels like death because we never learned that we're separate people. So this eclipse in the sign of the mother in its home sign, right? And then that chakra of the serpent that coils may bring enmeshment, codependency into sharp focus, right? So if you were raised in a mesh family system, this eclipse might feel like peeling, fused skin, joined together skin, painful, it hurts, it's supposed to. You're becoming a separate person for the first time for some of you, and not in this individual way where it's like I don't care about others, or we have learned through heartbreak and stuff to protect ourselves, and we're all behind our keyboards in general now, and not wanting to go out in public with all the craziness in the world, It's sort of like, you know, reaction to the pain, but becoming a separate person, realizing that this world is separate from who I am. And this doesn't mean you're better than the world or anything like that. It's to realize that you have this inner core, this inner world that you should cultivate, develop, and what can become your sanctuary when everything else is going on crazy and chaos. But because we have a lot of unresolved trauma, psychological, spiritual and emotional within, our internal world is chaos, and therefore we can't escape. So we use drugs and alcohol to escape, and they give us temporary release, as does Netflix and chilling and hookupping and all the other things. But ultimately, you know, this super new moon in Cancer is making us realize that to get peace we have to heal from within. We have to become more emotionally, spiritually and psychologically intelligent, and not in the bypassing way, like explaining things away. You know, if it hurts, it hurts, right? If you need to feel, you need to feel, but realizing that there's things and life beyond that feelings, and there's a world where you can integrate the pain and heartbreak. You don't need to make it rob you of having the life that you want to create for yourself. So in terms of the emotional inheritance, you know, you didn't just inherit eye colour and risk factors for disease. You inherited your grandmother's unprocessed grief, your father's hidden suppressed rage, your mother's survival strategies, 3 generations of we don't talk about that, and so on. And epigenetics, you know, how the environment affects our genes, confirms what healers have known forever. Trauma passes through bloodlines until someone has the conscience and courage to stop it. And this eclipse asks, are you that someone? You know, are you willing to be the one who breaks the, you know, cycle? Are you that somebody? The Leah song came into my head. Yeah, Google it and it's a good song. But anyway, the safety paradox. So what made you safe as a child can make you small as an adult. The strategies that kept you alive then, you know, fawning, you know, pleasing others to avoid conflict, you know, making yourself invisible, never asking for too much, and all other forms of people pleasing, those same strategies now keep you from the life you actually want. And this eclipse illuminates, puts a spotlight on the paradox, staying safe in old patterns, you know, your comfort zone, doing the same things with the same people, some of which have hurt you and continue to hurt you, is the most dangerous thing you can do. The real risk isn't changing, it's staying the same, whilst the cost of staying the same gets higher and higher year in, year out. And as you hear me say a lot, I know some people are in coercive relationships and other sticky financial situations. It's harder to leave, like it's not as easy as I'm going to go, you know. You have to make a plan and all of that, but make that plan. Emancipate yourself not only from your mental emotional slavery, but from the physical slavery of staying in toxic relationships that are only going to hurt you more and more and cost you more and more of your sanity year in and year out. So the permission wound, what is that? So somewhere along the line someone taught you that you needed permission to take up space, permission to have needs, permission to be angry, to say no, to want things, to resist at full value, right? This eclipse says no one's giving you permission, you have to take it, which is true. Sometimes we're waiting for nothing, sometimes we have to pick up our freedom, you know, and take it without apology. And that is, you know, revolutionary, completely changing your comfort zone, getting out of it, and to, you know, take that revolutionary act that this super new moon solar eclipse in Cancer on the 12th of August is asking us all to do. So what is it that gets activated during this eclipse, right? So there are many rooms. There are many rooms. There are many wounds. Oh, gosh, I get my Eddie to take a lot of these out, but somehow I just let him keep him, because I'm not polished, no one is. It's not about being polished, it's about just doing it, right? So, you know, if any of the wounds that I've mentioned resonate, or what I'm about to say resonate, you know, this eclipse will bring them to the surface, not to punish you but to heal them. But healing requires feeling, working with your emotions, and you can't process what you won't acknowledge, you know. You can't release what you pretend doesn't hurt or doesn't exist, right? So this eclipse eclipse window, especially from the 8th of August to the 16th is when the pressure is at the highest, right? So the emotions you've been managing suddenly become unmanageable. Relationships you've been tolerating, putting up with, suddenly feel intolerable, unable to bear. You just had enough, you've lost it, that's it. You've had it up to here, as we say in the UK, right, with it, and you're just like, F it, I don't want to do it no more. So the difference between what you're pretending is fine and what's actually fine becomes undeniable, right? So, wounds around rejection, abandonment, thinking that because you may have an impediment, dyslexia, speech impediment like me, ADHD, mental illness, stuff like that, that you can't be what you want to be, and other people putting you down because of, you may have the wrong hair colour, skin colour, and all of that, So the healing path that this eclipse offers is 3 clear steps, right? Name it. Say the thing out loud. I was emotionally neglected, not cared for. My mother was overwhelmed and I became her emotional support. I learned love meant sacrifice. And naming whatever it is that is, blocking you removes the same power, right? The guilt's power that it has over us. The things we hide often has more strength over us and power over us and stops us, right? Feel it. Don't spiritualize it. Don't bypass it. Don't transcend it. Don't make meaning before you have processed the grief. Cry, rage, let your body express what your mind has been suppressing, right, and hiding, and choose differently. This is where the eclipse new beginning comes in. You're not healing to become the person you would have been without the wound. You're healing to become someone new, someone who knows the wound and chooses not to pass it on. So this is very important, right? So this is where the eclipse new beginning comes in. You're not healing to become the person you would have been without the wound. You're healing to become someone new, someone who knows the wound and chooses not to pass it on, right? I said that twice because it's really important. So Cancer's mythology runs deeper than most people realise, and it's darker too. In Greek mythology, the crab appears in the story of Hercules battling Hydra, a many-headed serpent. Hera, the queen of the gods, and Hercules, nemesis, enemy, opponent, Hera and Hercules didn't get on, sent the crab to distract Hercules during this battle. The crab pinched Hercules' foot. Hercules crushed it. Hera, in recognition of the crab's loyalty, even though it failed, placed it in the heavens as the constellation of Cancer. Think about that for a moment, right? Cancer's origin story is about being sent by a mother figure to interfere, get in the way in a fight that wasn't its own, getting killed for its trouble, and being immortalized, made to last forever for its loyalty, right? So that's the shadow of Cancer. Loyalty to family systems that aren't loyal to you. Being the one who sacrificed for people who wouldn't do the same. Interfering in battles you think that's what love requires, then getting cross, then having everyone say, but at least you were loyal. But there's another layer, right? The Hydra, the many-headed serpent Hercules was fighting, connects directly to this eclipse's Nakshatra. Elisa means the intertwiner or the embracer. Its symbol, as I said, is a coiled serpent. The deity is Naga, the serpent god who sees everything, especially what's hidden. In Hindu tradition, Elisa's deity sees everything, especially what's hidden beneath the surface, right? The serpent knows the truth before you speak it. It knows what you are avoiding, what you're not saying, what you have buried in the basement of your psyche, your mind and soul, thinking it will stay there forever. This eclipse in Elisa brings the serpent's vision. Nothing stays hidden during the eclipse in the serpent's Nakshatra. So ultimately, in terms of the modern psychological interpretation, this is the codependency, unhealthy emotional dependency eclipse, the investment, unhealthy blaring of boundary eclipse, right? As I said, that I can't tell where my mother's trauma ends and mine begins eclipse. The serpent coils around you, and you have to ask, is this embracing nourishment or suffocating, making me unable to breathe? Is this closeness or consumption, being eaten or absorbed? And the serpent adds another dimension. In Jungian psychology, the serpent represents the connection to the unconscious, to the instinctual wisdom that predates, comes before rational thought, but it also represents the devouring mother, the mother that eats you, the mother who loves so fiercely that she consumes the child's autonomy, freedom, independence, self-direction. The connection to this specific eclipse is clear. Cancer's ancient crab, loyal to a fault, meets the serpent's penetrating vision. You can see exactly how your loyalty has been weaponized, used against you. You see how family first became family only, became family prison. You see how the embrace became a stranglehold, a tight, suffocating grip by being loyal to a family that wasn't loyal to you or can't be loyal to you. The thing is, if people don't have the tools, and it's a hard one, but we can't make people love us who don't, even if that's your mum or your dad. They have to do it on their own, and it's a hard one, a bitter pill to swallow, because naturally we see, when we see children whose parents love them to a fault and maybe yours don't, but ultimately we can't stop people who are not capable or don't want to love us, cut us off from our own self-love and the love of others, right? So this eclipse asks, now what? What are you going to do now that you see clearly what you need to do with the vision and the realization that, the love has to come from within you first, regardless if it was withheld from you. And yes, it's really hard to teach yourself love when you didn't have it, but this is what this eclipse wants, right? So now I'm just going to give some zodiac guidance for all 12 signs. That was the summary version. It went longer than 15 minutes. And then after that, zodiac guidance for all 12 sun, moon and rising signs, right? I am then going to go into the Vedic Layer in more detail, then talk about the aspects in more detail, the Sabian symbols and the retrogrades in more detail, then, how to manifest during the solar new moon eclipse, the medicine, how to deal with relationships, how to look after your diet and health, giving you some self-reflection questions, giving you more on the 6-month timing arc, what you should do and when, how to manage your energy and protect yourself, and to finish up with the core message of this eclipse. So yes, stay around for the deep dive. So for Aries, your 4th house is activated, your home, family, emotional foundation, your core destructive habits, end of life, legacy, all that 4th house stuff is under the lens, your inner home, your emotional life. So maybe you've been running from this judgment, reckoning, honest accounting. Maybe you've been charging forward, always forward, because standing still means feeling right. And remember, Aries is cardinal fire energy, but this eclipse is saying stop running. Just for August, Jupiter and Hygeia in your 4th house alongside this eclipse mean that the home situation is expanding, growing, whether you planned it or not. Maybe a literal move, maybe a renovation, more likely an internal renovation, knocking down, wiping out, demolishing of the emotional walls you built at age 7 maybe, and replacing them with something that actually lets light in. And the fire grand trine gives you potential for, extraordinary braveness, courage for this inner work. So the shadow task is admitting that needing people isn't a weakness, and action that you should take is tell one person what you're actually feeling without framing it as a problem to solve. So even if that person is you, right, speak your truth, Aries, and do what what's right. So for Taurus, your third house of communication, siblings, local environment, the grand Earth trine, Venus in Virgo, Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus, right, is your gift during this eclipse, practical, material, buildable, support, grounding energy. So your value system can undergo quite a change right now because of Uranus in Taurus energy, and it is giving that, you know, it's in your third house, this eclipse. Your revolution, your changes need words now. So write the letter, send the text, have the conversation with the sibling or anyone else you've been avoiding. Mercury in Cancer as part of the stellium means your emotional vocabulary can be richer than usual, so use it. The shadow task that this eclipse is asking you is to release the story that stability requires silence. In terms of one action to take, change one daily routine that no longer serves your emotional health, something you do on autopilot that numbs rather than nourishes, you know. For Gemini, this is hitting your second house, so the house of money, value, self-worth. So this eclipse is shaking the foundation, your core, your destructive habits, especially when it comes with your relationship with security. Mars and Aries are in your sign as part of the yard that I mentioned earlier, and that I will talk about later, right, if you listen on. And basically the yard, the finger is pointing from you towards the South Node in Leo, meaning your communication style and nurturing patterns are being, you know, karmically redirected by this eclipse. And the stellium in Cancer in your second house says your income may change, your spending habits might need examining, and your definition of enough is being completely rewritten. And, you know, the second house isn't just about money. It's about that felt sense of I am valuable without money, status, anything like that, right? And this eclipse asks, you know, if you believe that you are valuable when nobody's watching, when you're not performing intelligence, when you've got nothing clever to say, when you're just being, you know, without any, you know, fancy jewelry, clothes, anything like that. Are you valuable just for you? So your shadow task at the time of this super new moon eclipse is sitting in silence without reaching for stimulation. And, you know, the action you can take is calculate your actual financial health this month, real numbers, then make one structural change to them, you know, whether it be appreciating that you've got enough or taking steps to get more financially stable, but working on becoming stable from within by creating a solid sense of self built on you understanding your emotional, psychological and spiritual wounds and just loving you for you. For Cancer, this eclipse is hitting your first house, your body, your identity, you know, your sense of self and your self presentation, how you put yourself forward in the world. So, you know, there's nowhere to hide because this is your eclipse. The Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter and the asteroid Hygeia are all in your sign, all in your first house, all pointing their collective energy directly at who you are and what you have been pretending to be. And the serpent of Elisa is coiled around your very identity and it's shedding its skin, which means you're shedding yours. So physically you might look different by October. Emotionally you may be unrecognizable by February, you know, the 7th month of this energy. And the yard's demand and the T-square's pressure and the grand trine support will all combine and, you know, converge on you and energize you. And the shadow task is to let the old identity die without rescuing it. And the crab cell you've been living in has become a prison, not a home. So look in the mirror and say out loud the thing about yourself that you have never admitted to anyone. Then breathe, then do it again tomorrow, right? So Leo, your 12th house of the unconscious, hidden spirituality and isolation is activated for you during this eclipse, and the South Node is in Leo as well, so this is a double whammy. And the moon moves into your sign right 7 hours after the eclipse, so you're releasing old performances while simultaneously doing deep unconscious work. The 12th house is where the things dissolve before rebirth. This eclipse might bring vivid dreams, a need for solitude, spiritual emergence or emergency, grief for versions of yourself you've outgrown and relationships you've outgrown. And the South Node in Leo says you're releasing the need to be the one, the star, the special one, the exception. And the 12th house eclipse says this release happens privately for you internally before it becomes visible. So the saddle task you can do is admitting you're not actually fine being invisible, you're just terrified of being seen and rejected. So spend one full day in silence, no performance, no audience, just you alone with whatever rises and comes up, and sit with that and embrace that and lean into that, Virgo, this is hitting your 11th house of community, friends and future vision. So the eclipse in your 11th house activates your relationship with collective belonging, and Venus in your sign creates the Earth Grand Trine, meaning you have material support for building a new community. But here is what needs looking into, examining. Are you serving the community or hiding in service, Are you the indispensable, absolutely necessary helper because that's your genuine gift, or because being needed feels safer than being wanted? This eclipse asks you to audit, carefully examine your friendships and group affiliations, memberships. Who are you without genuine connection, and who are you without obligation, being needed, having to do things for others, So your shadow task is admitting you've been exhausted, burnout from being everybody's go-to problem solver. And we love you, Virgo, for that, but you must look after yourself. And the action you can take is to say no to one request for help this month, not rudely, just clearly, and watch what happens. Libra, this is hitting your 10th house of career, reputation, public life. The eclipse in your 10th house squares your midhaven within 9 arc minutes, so this is your career judgment. Not should I quit my job, but asking yourself questions such as, what are you doing for a living, and is it actually alive? Are you living it? Do you want to do it? Are you happy with what it's provided? Because sometimes we don't like our job, but we like the perks and the freedom it can give us. So you may work a job because it allows you to be more creative. So the midhaven square forces the integration of power and peace in your professional life and getting real about why you're doing what you're doing. And maybe you've been the dove at work, keeping the peace, the one who smooths things over, but the ego wants out. Your ambition, your desire for recognition, your need to be seen as powerful. These aren't dirty words, Libra. And the 3 grand trines mean that you have, the intellectual and social support for professional reinvention and change, So the shadow task is admitting you want power and recognition, not just harmony in your workspace, Libra. And to apply this energy, actually apply for a job that you're slightly underqualified for, or something else, of course, and let them tell you no. Practice saying no without collapsing, because that is a hard lesson. We don't like no. It leads to rejection and fear, and we won't ask for things because we don't hear no. But this eclipse is asking us to face our fear, especially with the feminine energy, and dealing with the emotions that come when we are moved by either event of saying no and getting rejection, right, and to become more emotionally solid. So Scorpio, this is hitting your 9th house of philosophy, higher learning, expansion. The eclipse in your 9th house, whilst the South Node is in your 10th house of careers, asking what's the belief system underneath your professional choices. So what philosophy have you been operating from without questioning? The eclipse gives you mystical support for philosophical transformation, transforming your belief system. But Scorpio, you don't need to stop using depth as deflection. You go deep to avoid going wide. You analyze to avoid feeling. This eclipse asks you to expand beyond your comfortable intensity, travel literally or metaphorically, learn something completely outside of your expertise. Let yourself be a beginner. The shadow of this energy is admitting you use intensity to control situations sometimes, and action is to maybe take a class in something you know nothing about, being competent, public publicly and survive it. This is how you build your strength, your inner strength, right? That emotional foundation this solar eclipse in Cancer wants us all to build, right? So Sagittarius, your 8th house of death, transformation and shared resources and intimacy is, working on your soul work. Sag, the 8th house strips away pretense, false appearances, fakeness. It sets death, taxes, therapy, trauma, transformation, everything polite society avoids. So you're usually running towards the horizon, seeing the big picture, wanting to try new things. But this eclipse locks the door and says, not yet. First you deal with what's in the basement, what you're hiding deep down in your psychological, emotional and spiritual closets. In terms of shared resources, who owes you? Who do you owe? What energetic debts are you carrying? What other debts? Maybe money debts, not just energy ones, right? What intimacy wounds need looking after and tending to? The yard involving Juno says fate is redirecting your growth through emotional depth. So the shadow task is admitting you use philosophy and ideas to avoid feeling, and book a therapy session, or take some time out for self-care, do a tarot reading, or sit with a trusted friend and cry with them or on your own. Choose depth over breadth for once, so choose going within and dealing with the small stuff rather than just focusing on the big stuff, the breadth, right? So Capricorn, your 7th house of partnerships, marriage, committed relationships is activated. So the eclipse in your 7th house, while Pluto transits your sign, is maximum pressure on relationships and partnerships. You're transforming individually whilst your relationships are being eclipsed. So what worked in partnerships before doesn't work now because you don't work the same way now, and the earth going to try and support structural deep relationship changes. You can build new arrangements, new spaces for connection. But first you have to admit, the old ones are crumbling, the old spaces, the old agreements and commitments you had. So the shadow task is admitting you've been the strong one in every relationship because vulnerability feels like failure. If this is the case for you, ask your partner for help with something real, not a test, but actually asking, let them support you, practice receiving. So Aquarius, your 6th house is activated. So your health, daily routine and service. So the eclipse in the 6th house, whilst the North Node is in your sign, is your destiny calling through your daily choices, right? The 6th house is where beliefs, philosophy becomes practice, your values practicing, what you say you believe, right? So it's not what you believe and say you believe, it's what you do every single day, right? Your health, your routines, your relationship with service or under pressure during this eclipse. So the grand trines mean intellectual support is abundant, but Aquarius, you need to get out of your own head and into your body. Your nervous system is giving you data, your sleep patterns are information, your gut health is feedback, listen. So, in terms of your shadow task, admitting that you use detachment to avoid intimacy with yourself. In terms of an action to take, track one health metric for 2 weeks, sleep, water intake and mood, make it concrete. Let the data inform you. So Pisces, your 5th house of creativity, pleasure, children and romance are under the spotlight, and it's asking you, when was the last time you created something for pure joy? Not for money, not for healing others, not for spiritual growth, just because it felt good. Saturn and Neptune in your sign are already restructuring your identity. The eclipse in your 5th house says express that restructuring through play, through art, through romance, through whatever makes you feel alive without needing to make it meaningful. So the shadow of this energy is admitting that you may spiritual bypass to avoid earthly pleasure, because pleasure feels selfish. So you may be like, oh, I must give up my earthly desires of wanting that cake or that hookup, And so this eclipse wants you to do something purely for fun this month, but in a safe way. Don't do it for a lesson, not for growth, not for healing, just for play. Let yourself be delighted by something, Pisces, right? This is what this eclipse wants for you. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the first Vedic layer, right? So, as I said before, Elisa rules this Nakshatra where the sun and the moon are at the time of this solar eclipse, right? So, Mercury rules this whole Nakshatra, but Aquarius and Saturn rules part of 3. So, the Naga as the cosmic archivist, right? So, keeping records, right? That's what an archivist does. So there is something your teaching touches but does not name directly. So who taught the serpent what it knows, right? So Elisa's planetary ruler is Mercury, not Venus, not the moon, Mercury. The planet of records, language, code, the messenger between worlds, the one who reads the fine print, right? So this matters enormously at the time of this solar eclipse in Elisa, because the Naga in this Nakshatra is not only a serpent of instinct, it is a keeper of the Akashic archive records, right? Coiled at the root of the world tree, remembering everything that has been written before the conscious mind knew to forget. So the Sabian symbol for this eclipse sigil degree, guests are reading in the library of a luxurious home, is not a coincidence. The library is the Naga's domain. The home is the 4th house, Cancer, collective, emotional body. The guests are you, arriving at a building full of information you did not know even exists. The eclipse cuts the solar noise, the chattering Mercury mind, and what surface is the sudden dark, and this is not chaos, it is the record. So, you may ask, what was written in the body, in the recurring dreams that you may have, in the pattern you kept trying to explain away? Answer that, think about the themes of your life. Mercury in Elisa is the mind that calls back on itself. During this eclipse, that coiling is not anxiety, it is forensic. You are being asked to read your own file, to dig deep, not to interpret it, to reflect on your life experiences, not to heal it, but to read it, to be aware of it. The Naga knows what is in there. Mercury's gift at this eclipse is the ability to receive it in language you can finally use, right, to help yourself feel it and understand and then process it later. So what has been recorded in you that you have been too, solar, sun, identity, too conscious, too performative to access, right? Allow the moon energy to unlock your unconscious, and it's in Cancer, the ruler of the moon, right? So the 26th degree of Cancer, part of 3, the opening strike, the sun goes dark on purpose, right? At the time of this solar eclipse, this is what it does. Technically, the moon steps in front of the light source for those minutes. The solar ego mind, the one that performs and protects and manages impressions, goes offline for a bit, and what is left is the Naga's truth, your truth, not your creative self, but your truth, who you really are, the coiled one who has been watching from the root. So this is the supermoon eclipse, as I said, and the moon's at perigee, which means that its gravitational field is at its maximum pull and everything fluid. So, as I said, the oceans and also the psychic body, the emotional architecture, the patterns coded in the bloodline, the pull is not subtle, you will feel it, and it's also at Avasa Bala, 25% strength, because Cancer is in an even sign, and in even signs the Avasa sequence reverses, and at 25, 55 to 26 degree of Cancer, the eclipse lands in Bala, Infra Avastra, 25% vitality, and this is not a weakness, this is seed state. What is planted at Bala is embryonic, not demonstrative. Don't look for dramatic transformations by the 13th of August. This eclipse is not about an accumulation, an ending. It's a conception, a birth, right? What cracks open now will grow for 18 months inside before it sows. This means don't perform the breakthrough, don't perform the healing, let it begin in the dark where the seeds belong, right? And as I said earlier, the moon is fully combust with Jupiter, where Jupiter's combust, and the moon's combust because it's at total 0 degree separation with the sun. Your emotional body, your inner life, your nervous system is fully subsumed, eclipsed by the sunlight, and your individual experience is swallowed by the collective event. You cannot keep your private feelings private during a total solar eclipse in Elisa. The venom will surface. So as I said, words may be said that can't be unsaid, and this doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because sometimes we need to let the raw truth comes out and deal with the consequences, right? So the question this lunar eclipse confronts once again is, will you weaponize it or alchemize it, transform it, right? This energy. The combustion is the mechanism of the eclipse itself. It is not a malfunction, a defect. It is the design. So as I said, Jupiter is in Guru Daristi, and rising from the combustion on this day. So this changes everything. So yeah, Jupiter, which is exalted in Cancer, has been combust since the 14th of July. Its wisdom, suppressed, hidden, its blessings operating invisibly. And on the 12th of August, that day of this eclipse, Jupiter emerges, comes up again, and the eclipse and Jupiter's rising happen at the same time. So Jupiter rising right at this eclipse point in Elisa is the intensification of this rare event, right? So this is a special eclipse, right? If you haven't gathered that, this year is special. It's a magical year, right? It's a 1 year numerologically. 2 add 6 is 1, so new beginnings, right? So the serpent library gains Jupiter's magnification, and whatever wisdom comes up for you at the time of this eclipse is not a whisper, it's a broadcast. It's what you need to follow over the next 9 years, right? And also your personal numerology, look into that, because this may be a 9 year for you or 7, but on the collective it's a 1 year for us, new beginnings. So Jupiter also casts its Daristi forward. Its 5th house aspect lands on Scorpio, the death and the transformation axis, right? And its 7th house energy lands on Capricorn, the structures you have built or the structures you are up against, the patriarchal kind of repressive, inhumane systems that stop people's human rights and all of that. And its 9th house of Jupiter, right, Daristi, lands on Pisces, where Saturn is stationed right now. So Jupiter's wisdom hits Saturn's discipline directly. The question is whether your beliefs and the structures, the systems, the routines, the boundaries you've committed to are actually aligned, or whether you've been maintaining spiritual authority while privately running on empty. So it's again letting us know about self-care and looking after ourselves, right? And this is mundanely happening in the 4th house Cancer, right? The foundation, the core destructive habits that cracked open, and the collective emotional body and our inherited patterns and our psychological spiritual core and our mother home energy, right? So a total lunar eclipse in the 4th house of natural zodiac, because Cancer is the 4th sign, means a collective reckoning, judgment with what we are built on nationally, globally, and we're seeing this, right, environmentally, psychologically, spiritually. Our habits, our core daily habits are coming into question. In your personal life, ask yourself, what are you calling home that is not safe? What inherited response are you calling your personality? What defense mechanism are you calling yourself when it's not? It's a defense mechanism that was built years ago that you've forgotten, right? So eclipse effects operate on the solar cycle, and the themes echo from Taurus's 126 last major eclipse 18 years prior. So this was August 2008. So the practice window for this eclipse is from the 5th to the 19th of August 2026. So doing rituals then, sorting out your house, you know, inner and outer is what you should be doing with this energy. And if you want to really capitalize on this energy, the real practice window is the 12th of August on whatever time it happens for you. In the UK, you know, the new moon, and then the eclipse is peak at 6:46 p.m, you know, so this is not a day for announcements, initiations or decisions. This is a reading day in Naga's library, you know, so take some time out for meditation, even if it's just 2 minutes. I know it can be impractical with life and its demands, right? So what comes up for you during your still time, whether it's on the commute to work, whatever, the memory, the body sensation, the dream image, the thing you almost said, write it down without interpreting it yet. In the week that follows, let the seed settle. Jupiter rising from combustion will intensify whatever insight came through, and the translation of this event will, you know, typically arrive between, you know, the 14th and 31st of August, but it may take a bit longer for some of you, you know, so just sit with the question, what has been written in me that the solar mind kept editing out, and why is that, right? Also on the personal level, pay attention to your moon sign. This eclipse will hit you more if you have Cancer, Scorpio, Capricorn or Pisces placements, or your moon's in the 4th, 8th, 10th or 12th house. You know, if your rising sign happens to be Cancer or, you know, Scorpio, Capricorn or Pisces as well, and, you know, whatever transits are transiting your personal chart as well, and whatever planet is in the 26th to the 30th degree, or in fact from the 16th Sabian degree to the 30th, right? Thinking about if your natal moon is, you know, near the 26th degree of Cancer, this will hit you. Or if you have any planets in the 26th degree, as I said, you know, and, you know, also, you know, the 26th degree of Capricorn is your moon there, something opposing there, you know, and your natal Jupiter position as well. Jupiter rising from combustion on this eclipse day interacts personally if it aspects your natal planets, right? So is Jupiter aspecting any planets, conjunct your ascendant, Pluto, whatever, you know, and as well as any other planetary transits and events that's affecting your personal natal chart as well. So now I'm just going to talk about the aspects in more depth, you know, the conversations between the planets at the time of this solar eclipse, you know, where the moon and the sun are fused, you know, combined together. So because of this, I'm combining the sun and moon, right, even though they're on slightly different orbs. So both the sun and the moon are square in the midheaven. So we have the sun at 0.04 orb, right, and the moon at 0.09 square orb, square in the midheaven. So this is the tightest aspect in this entire chart, right? And when an eclipse squares your midheaven within 4 arc minutes, your career, reputation and public story are directly in the blast zone, right, as I said earlier. And the Sabian symbol of the midheaven, even though I'm going to go into the midheaven Sabian symbols and all the others in much more deeper detail later, an eagle and a dove, a large white dove, turning one into the other. So what's been squared and what's under pressure is the integration of power and peace in your public life. Maybe you've been the eagle at work and the dove at home. Maybe you've been the dove everywhere and the eagle nowhere, swallowing your ambitions, your goals, because someone told you wanting things means that you are selfish, right? And the square says the split can't hold anymore. You don't get to compartmentalize, divide into separate parts, your power and your tenderness, your vulnerabilities, right, into separate life areas. They must merge, they must come together. So you may have some disruption in your professional identity, and this is not random chaos, even though it may be chaotic. It's targeted revolution, a moment of seeing truth. Something about your career path that you've been avoiding maybe can surface for some of you, and the midheaven Raven's body part connection, you know, the vascular system of our skin, means that it will show. You can't hide this transformation or this need to transform, and people will notice you're changing and let them, right? The sun and the moon is also making a biquintile to the ascendant, and the sun's at 0.32 orb and the moon's at 0.37. So the biquintile is one of the most creative, talent orientated aspects, you know, and relate to our unique gifts, creative genius and abilities that don't fit conventional traditional categories, right? So there are aspects of weird brilliance. So the biquintile to the ascendant, your physical body appearance and how you present yourself, shows that creative reinvention of how you present yourself is on the cards for you during this eclipse, right? As I said, this eclipse wants us to change a lot. It's not a shallow makeover, it's a genuine shift, you know, change in how your internal transformation becomes externally visible. You might change how you dress, how you wear your hair, how you carry yourself physically, and these are not vanity moves, right? They are external expression of internal renovation, rebuilding, and the ascendant is the doorway between your inner and outer worlds, and the biquintile says a creative, unexpected, uniquely you portal is opening. Walk through it with style, right? Also, the sun and the moon are making a semi-square to Venus at 0.46 and 0.51 orb. So the semi-square is a minor hard aspect, so don't let the minor fool you at this orb. With this eclipse, there's nothing minor about it. Semi-squares create friction, irritation, the pebble in your shoe, discomfort that won't kill you, but will drive you mad until you deal with it. And Venus is love, relationships, values, money, beauty, pleasure, what you want versus what you think you should want, right? And the semi-square means all of this is slightly out of alignment with your emotional needs, your moon and your identity, the sun, right? So in relationships, you might notice you're doing emotional labor work whilst your partner does less. You may notice you're performing affection you don't feel, and also notice, you know, calling it love when it's actually just comfortable. And the eclipse forces honesty, right? What money values are yours, you know? You may notice your bank account doesn't reflect your stated priorities. You might notice you're spending on things that don't nourish you. You might notice you're undercharging because you're still measuring your worth by someone else's standards. The semi-square asks, what do you actually value? Not what you were taught to value, what you value, start there. The sun and the moon is also making a sextile square to Neptune, right? So this is a hard aspect. So Neptune is fog, illusion, spirituality, compassion, boundary, dissolution, complete breakdown of the edges, addiction, self-sacrificing, the place where you can't tell what's real. And this eclipse sextile square Neptune means your emotionally rawness, and Neptune's blurring that rawness, right? You know, you're on edge, really. You can be more open to ignoring red flags and being susceptible to accepting lies and manipulation. You can't see clearly, so this aspect brings the fog. You're not sure what's your pain and what someone else's. You may not know if you're being compassionate or codependent, you know, and you can't tell if you're surrendering to spirit or disassociating, disconnecting from reality. So the gift is Neptune softens the blows that life can give us, right? And we're cracking open. But Neptune offers the pain numbing substance, you know, the anesthetic, and it opens us up to the creativity, spirituality, dreams and art kind of impulses that are all heightened, increased right now, and we can use those to heal ourselves but not to escape into. The danger is, of course, that we might spiritualize, make spiritual meaning from what needs practical action, right? You may forgive what needs boundaries. You may float when you need to feel, and the medicine is to feel first, spiritualize later. Don't make this eclipse mean something before you have processed the grief. The meaning will come, feel first. So that's the whole message of this eclipse. A lot of aspects, a lot of the chakras, and the main message of this eclipse is to get real on your emotional needs, stop people pleasing, being codependent. And yeah, it is not easy, right? But it's again tapping into that generational dysfunction that we've all experienced and asking us to break the chains patterns and to, get real on what it is we want to do and who we want to be. So the Sun and the Moon trine Pallas at 2:30 to 2:36 orbs, right? So a trine is easy, flowing, natural talent, energy that allow things to work without forcing them. And Pallas is strategy, pattern recognition, wisdom, the ability to see the whole chessboard whilst others see only one move. And this trine means you have access to the wisdom during this eclipse. You can see patterns that you've been repeating. You can strategize your way out of emotional chaos. You know what needs to happen. The path is clear, even when it's hard, right? So use this energy to think strategically, right? Don't just feel your way through this eclipse, even though, a lot of the aspects have told you to do that. But Pallas here wants us to actually think strategically and ask, what patterns are you breaking? What's the long game? How do you build something sustainable long term from crisis? Pallas offers the map, the eclipse offers the motivation. Together they're playful, so the trining, so it's making it easier for us to let go of the things that we need to let go of, right? So the Sun and the Moon are also trining Saturn, bringing that stability, right? Saturn is structure, routines, boundaries, discipline, time, reality, the elder who knows shortcuts don't work. And the trine to Saturn means you have support for building something real. And the foundation, our core self, our destructive habits that we all fall into or under the spotlight at the time of this, eclipse. And this is our stability anchor, right? Saturn is bringing the ground in with the grand Earth trine as well, whilst everything else is emotionally chaos and the retrograde confusion. Saturn says, I will hold the structure, routines, boundaries whilst you fall apart and rebuild at the time of this eclipse, right? So what this means practically is that boundaries you set now will stick. Structure, routines that you set now will last. Commitments you make now will have staying power, and the foundation, the core habits laid now won't crumble. And Saturn asks, what are you actually building? Make it real, make it solid, make it something that can hold you when everything else is shaking, right? And then we've got the Sun and the Moon trining the Black Moon Lilith, right? At 6:11 to 6:16 orbs. So Lilith is part of you that was exiled, pushed out, banished, the rage you weren't allowed to have, the sexuality that was shamed, the power that was called dangerous, the too much that you learned to hide, right? And the trine means that Lilith and the eclipse are working together. Your exiled parts want to come home. Your suppressed rage wants expression. Your banished power wants to be reclaimed. This eclipse can activate you, those things when you realise that you have been performing the good girl, the good person, the nice guy, whilst you've actually have been letting your real self die, people pleasing. So, it wants you to rage at systems that demanded your smallness, reclaim parts of yourself you sacrificed to keep others comfortable. The gift is you don't have to fight to access Lilith at the time of this eclipse. The trine makes it flow, your anger, your impulsive side. You can be powerful without destroying though. You can be angry without being destructive. You can reclaim your exiled parts, the parts of you sacrificed and pushed down, without losing yourself in the rage, right? And the Sun and the Moon are also making a trine to Vista at 7:04 to 7:09 orb. So Vista is devotion, deep commitment, sacred work, the flame you look after and tend to when no one's watching, who you are in private, right? So the trine means your devotion is aligned with this eclipse. What you are devoted to, ask yourself that. What are you devoted to? What am I devoted to? Not obligated to, things that you're forced to do, but what do you actually want to commit to? And to know the difference between the things that you want to do and commit to and the things you're obligated, like paying council tax in the UK and stuff like that, is part of the rebuilding. Questions to ask is, what am I devoted to? What do I tend to look after faithfully? Is my devotion serving me, or am I devoting myself to things, people that don't give back? This trine offers clarity about where your devotion belongs, your time, energy and other resources belong, and you will know what's worth your sacred attention and what's just habit dressed up as loyalty, right? So in terms of the transiting aspect patterns, right, we've got a T-square between Neptune in Pisces, Mars in Gemini and Venus in Virgo. So this T-square, the first one of two, creates relentless pressure on how you communicate needs versus how you receive love at the time of this eclipse. So Mars in Gemini drives urgent conversation, you know, the things you need to say now, whilst Neptune in Pisces dissolves every boundary, making clarity impossible. So what you say now may lead to chaos and consequences, right? And Venus in Virgo tries to organise the chaos through service and practical love, but you know, Virgo is caught in the crossfire between action and Mercury and dissolution, letting go of Pisces. So during the eclipse conjunct Jupiter combust, this T-square intensifies us feeling overwhelmed emotionally and spiritually and psychologically. You may want to speak your truth, Mars in Gemini, but Neptune's fog makes you question whether your truth is even real, you know. Venus demands you show love through doing, through fixing, through being useful, but the eclipse asks whether that's actually love or just performative caretaking. The tension demands integration. Speak your needs clearly, hold compassion for confusion, serve without martyring, all three at the same time. So the second T-square is between Pluto in Capricorn, Juno in Capricorn, Chiron in Aries and Mercury in Cancer, right? And this T-square puts your voice, Mercury in Cancer, part of the eclipse stellium, right, under pressure from the power structures and identity wounds that Chiron, Neptune and all the other planets are bringing, right? Pluto and Juno in Capricorn demand you reckon, you know, face authority and your commitments, asking yourself who holds the power in your life, right? Who holds the power in your partnerships or career? Chiron in Aries retrograde asks whether you even believe you have the right to speak. Mercury conjunct the eclipse means your words carry extra weight right now, you know, but the T-square tension creates paralysis. Speak and risk being too much, the Chiron wounds. Stay silent and betray yourself, which is Pluto's demand, right? Jupiter combusts at the eclipse point, magnifies this internal war. Your wisdom wants expression, but the value terrifies you. What you need to say terrifies you, right? So the resolution isn't balanced, it's about integrating all the different needs. Your voice is your power, your wounds inform your wisdom. Speak from the scar, not the performance. So yeah, you know, as I said, you may have to say things that are going to be hard to take back, but sometimes we need the truth to clear the air, and we can live in reality rather in the fakery that lying and pretense brings, right? So the grand trine between the moon and the sun in Cancer, the black moon in Lilith in Sagittarius and Vesta in Aries and Pallas in Pisces. So this is our strategic emotional genius network at the time of this eclipse, right? It's bringing support from three power sources: Lilith's exiled hidden rage, now weaponized as truth; Vista's sacred fire redirected towards authentic identity; and Pallas's pattern recognition, showing you exactly how the cycles repeat. And Jupiter combusts at this eclipse point means this wisdom operates at maximum value but minimum visibility. You know exactly what the truth is, right, before you can prove it. And the grand trine in fire and water creates flow between feeling and action. You're not just processing the mother wound, you're actually burning through it. Lilith shows you where you've been too small, Vista shows you what deserves your devotion, and Pallas shows you the pattern underneath both. So the trine means this integration flows naturally. You don't have to force the breakthrough. Trust the strategy your rage is revealing. So the grand trine, Venus in Virgo, Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus, right, the earth grand trine, grains this eclipse's emotional chaos into material reality. So Venus in Virgo offers the practical love, service structure, as I said, and Pluto in Capricorn transforms the power dynamics and career foundation and our core habits, right? and Uranus in Taurus revolutionizes our values and security. So this trine says the emotional earthquake happening at the eclipse can be built into something real. Jupiter combusts and conjunct this eclipse expands, grows our ability for material manifestation, and what you're feeling isn't just psychological, it's structural. The earth element demands make it real, build the boundary, change the living situation, restructure the financial agreement, leave the job that requires emotional self-betrayal. The trine provides the support, but you still have to do the work. Earth doesn't manifest through visualization, it manifests through practical action, right? So dig the foundation and lay the bricks, right? And, you know, by your daily habits, build something that holds when everything else is shaking you. That emotional core, I said that this solar eclipse is bringing our attention to, especially the way the world is going now. We need to love ourselves despite what other people have said, you know, the reasons why not to love ourselves. We need to love on ourselves hard, forgive ourselves, and know we were only ever doing the best we could do at the time, even when we think, oh, I could have been doing better. Well, you actually can't, because the difference between a thought and a practical action, if you could actually do better, you would have done it, right? So we have the grand trine between Chiron and Vesta in Aries, the South Node in Leo, and the Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius, right? So this grand trine, you know, the fire one creates a nice, you know, doing energy for us to really tap into and move forward, and it's a release mechanism for our performance wounds, right? So Chiron and Vesta together in Aries ask, what devotion did you build from your identity wound? You know, what habit that may be destroying you, you know, being who you truly are? What sacred flame are you looking after because you learned your worth required constant proving? The South Node in Leo releases the need to be the one, special, chosen, exceptional, people pleaser, you know, to be liked. And Lilith in Sagittarius exhales, you know, gets rid of the lie that your truth needs permission or credentials or approval. And during this eclipse, you know, conjunct Jupiter combust, this fire network burns through decades of performing specialness or people pleasing to earn love and acceptance, and the trine offers flow. You can release the performance without losing yourself. You can stop being extraordinary and discover you're enough. The wound Chiron informs the devotion Vista. The devotion releases the performance, the South Node, and the release reveals the exile truth, you know, Lilith. So it's about integration, not transcendence. You're healing by becoming ordinary, finally, right? So there's a yard between Juno in Capricorn, Mars and Aries in Gemini, and the Moon South Node in Leo. So the yard, as I said, is fate's finger, and it's directly pointed at the South Node in Leo, which is the karmic release point, right? Juno in Capricorn at the base demands commitment, a judgment, asking once again what partnerships are built on power imbalance that is disguised as loyalty. Mars and Aries in Gemini at the other base create urgent communication about nurturing who mothers whom in your relationship, and is it like two-way, is it reciprocal? The finger points at Leo South Node, demanding you release the performance that keeps these dynamics alive. Jupiter combusts at the eclipse, not part of the yard but intensifying its pressure, expands the karmic demand. You cannot keep performing specialness to earn care whilst at the same time building an authentic partnership. The yard's tension has no easy resolution. It's fate's demand. Stop being the star who needs an audience. Stop being the person who needs a real connection. The discomfort is the point, right, of your growth. So the 3-point stellium, right, where Mercury, Jupiter and Hygeia in Cancer, the center of everything at the time of this eclipse, right? So Mercury brings voice and communication, and Jupiter combusts, coming from combustion on the eclipse day, mean this is a very special eclipse, brings wisdom and growth, and Hygeia brings health, consciousness, all fused with the sun and moon at the time of this eclipse. So this isn't 3 separate influences, it's one unified force. Your voice, Mercury, carries wisdom, Jupiter that directly affects your health, which is hygiene, and all of it operates through emotional truth, Cancer. So Jupiter's emergence from combustion on the exact day of the eclipse is extraordinarily rare, right? So suppressed wisdom is suddenly set free, allowed to broadcast, and it's exalted in Cancer. It's good in Cancer, Jupiter, right? So what you have known privately for months becomes unavoidably public, and this stellium says your emotional health, your physical health, and your capacity to speak truth are the same thing. They are not separate systems. The mother wound lives in your gut, your voice, your immune system. Healing requires integration. Feel it, speak it, look after it. All three of these at the same time, right? So yeah, that's the end of the transiting aspect part. So now we're going down into, the final parts where I'm going to talk about the what the planets in retrograde means, the Sabian symbols, how to manifest during this eclipse, what to do, looking at the numerology, then also the medicine, and how we can look after our diet and lifestyle, and self-reflection questions and all that jazz, right? So yeah, let's go. So now I'm going to talk about the retrogrades, the planets in reverse in more depth. So, as I said, when this eclipse hits on the 12th of August, we're not just dealing with the eclipse. We've got Jupiter leaving combustion, we've got Mercury and Hygeia next to it, got the South Node in Leo near the Moon and the Sun at the time of this eclipse. We've got a lot going on, but we've also got these retrogrades, as I said, right? So we're dealing with a field of retrograde outer planets that fundamentally alter how the eclipse manifests, shows up, and becomes real for each and every one of us. So we've got 4 major planets in retrograde, as I said: Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn, and Chiron, right? And it's not just background noise, that's the entire astrological weather system moving in reverse whilst you're trying to plant new emotional seeds, right? So Pluto stationary retrograde in Capricorn, right? So it went retrograde on the 6th of May, leaving in October on the 16th, right? So Pluto in Capricorn is already dissolving, breaking down old power structures, routines and boundaries, and transforming how we relate to authority, spirituality and the collective unconscious, our shared hidden feelings, right? And this retrograde adds a review quality, asking what did you learn? How did you learn to give your power away, right? What authority did you surrender that was actually yours to keep and empower yourself with? So the 10th house of career, public image and legacy, that's where Capricorn normally rules and lives, and Saturn rules it, but yeah. So this eclipse cracks open your emotional foundation, your core destructive habits, which is represented by Cancer, whilst Pluto retrograde asks you to reclaim power in your professional life. The mother wound and the authority wound are connected, and how you were mothered affects how you relate to bosses, how you stand up for yourself, how you move through hierarchies of systems of rank and power, and your own leadership capacity and ability, right? So Pluto's influence in this eclipse is warning us to not make any major career moves during the eclipse window. Write things down if you're thinking about leaving, right, but don't act on them yet. Reclaim your power internally until when it crystallizes, become clear and solid in October. So use this eclipse to identify where you have been small professionally because you're afraid of being too much emotionally and standing up for yourself, So Neptune station retrograde in Pisces went in on the 7th of July, and this is like 1 month in. It's a very fresh retrograde, and it leaves on the 12th of December 2026. So Neptune in its home size of Pisces is peak mystical, peak dissociative, disconnecting from reality energy, and also peak I can't tell where I end and where you begin energy as well, right? So this retrograde demands to get honest about where you've been using spirituality to avoid reality, where you've been confusing, mixing up compassion with codependency, unhealthy emotional entanglement, and where you've been dissolving boundaries that should actually exist, right? With the view to set up these boundaries, because you need boundaries, right? To stop yourself from being codependent. So Neptune retrograde is making a sextile square to the moon and the sun at the time of this eclipse, as I said when I was talking about aspects. So the fog, the disillusionment, the fantasy is thick and high. We may not see what's actually happening, and the 12th house placement of the unconscious, hidden, what you can't see about yourself, means, trust your gut but verify, check with trusted others, or check your sources of information before readily believing anything right now. Don't make decisions based solely on feelings. Right now your feelings are real, but they may not be actually accurate under Neptune's retrograde haze and fantasy delusion, right? So ultimately this energy offers a gift. You can see through your own illusions, your false beliefs, if you're willing to look objectively at yourself, which can be hard to do, but we've got Saturn trines and energies helping us, right, to the moon and sun grounding us. So ask yourself, where have you been romanticizing, seeing in an overly positive way situations that are actually harmful to you and your overall well-being on the mind, body and soul level? Where have you been calling investment, unhealthy blending love? This eclipse shows you, and Neptune retrograde asks, are you ready to see clearly? So Saturn retrograde in Pisces is, a brand new retrograde. We're just 17 days in at the time of this eclipse. Saturn went retrograde on the 26th of July and goes direct on the 10th of December. So as I said, Saturn is structure, routines, boundaries, discipline, reality checks. The elder who knows time doesn't lie. So, Pisces, disillusion, letting go, no boundaries, mystical truth, right? We've got Saturn here, we've got Neptune here, right? So Saturn is bringing the discipline to the Pisces energy, right? So it's reminding us that we have to stick to routines, make routines, also factor in time for failures and emotional, spiritual, psychological down days, and physical events like disruptions in travel and illness and stuff as well. In order to reach our goals, we have to factor in all of this and allocate the right time. Saturn is learning to build spaces, structures, routines and boundaries that hold in the boundlessness when it's in Pisces, to build structures for our spirituality. So we may find ourselves asking what discipline was actually just fear of wearing a work ethic, and the ways that we can avoid our responsibilities but also get lost in overworking ourselves and exhaustion and burnout, right? So Saturn's trining the moon and the sun, this eclipse, is our stability anchor place, safe space, whilst everything else is in chaos and emotional and the retrograde confusion. Saturn says, I will hold the structures, routines, boundaries whilst you fall apart and rebuild. And the retrograde means that, our routines and systems that we're building during this eclipse will require internal work first. You can't just slap up walls and call it home and defense mechanisms. It's asking us, to build a psychological, spiritual, internal self place by understanding our wounds and trauma and learning to work or continue to work to manage and accept and forgive ourselves and others, right? So, this isn't about external achievement. As I said, Saturn wants us to discipline our inner world and create internal support structures and boundaries that can hold our emotional truth and all the truths, right, without collapsing and breaking down, and even, making room for us to break down emotionally and spiritually and hold us while we do so. So we've got Chiron retrograde in Aries. So this went in on the 3rd of August, so we're just 9 days in, and it goes direct on the 6th of January, right? So Chiron is the wounded healer, the place where you hurt so deeply that you become an expert in that exact pain. So in Aries, our self-identity, our right to resist, our right to take up space is under the spotlight. So Chiron here marks the primal, the initial wound of I don't have the right to be me. The wound of, held down, suppressed anger, denied needs, collapsed sense of self, the way we people please and fit into who our parents, our lovers, society and everyone else tells us to be. And this retrograde period demands go back and look at where you learned to make yourself small, where you learned that your anger was dangerous, where you learned that having needs made you a burden. And this is an abstract spiritual word. This is the wound that makes you apologize for resisting. So Chiron retrograde in Aries, whilst the eclipse cracks open in Cancer, our home, our mother, our emotional foundation and our core habits, right, is the direct line between how you were mothered, and cared for, and whether you believe you have the right to be yourself. If you were raised by a parent who needed you to be easy, compliant, not too loud, not too much, Chiron in Aries holds that wound. If you learn to hold in, suppress, repress your anger because anger got you punished or abandoned, Chiron in Aries holds that wound for you. Whatever your wound is, right, around your anger and being yourself, maybe you learned to have no needs because needs made you difficult. Chiron in Aries holds that wound as well. So this retrograde wants you to go back to retrieve and get back the parts of yourself that you amputated, cut off to survive your childhood and what you cut off in adulthood or any other stage in your life, right? This eclipse shows you where those parts are buried, and the retrograde gives you permission to dig them up. So this is a first retrograde, as I said, 9 days in. It's crucial. The wound is raw right now. You might feel it physically in your body, in your nervous system, in the way you flinch when someone gets too close to your boundaries. Don't perform fake healing. Don't rush to I have processed this. This retrograde lasts until January. You have time, right? And then it's in pre-shadow to about March, this Chiron retrograde, where we're still feeling the retrograde energy. So to practically use this energy, as I said, this eclipse is meant to trigger, activate old patterns where you deny and collapse and hide your needs to keep the peace, where you swallow your anger to avoid conflict, where you make yourself small to make others comfortable. Notice it. Don't perform healing. Don't spiritual bypass with I release this wound. The retrograde asks, are you ready to get angry about what was done to you? Are you ready to admit you have needs? Are you ready to take up space without apologizing? The wound doesn't heal by pretending it doesn't hurt. It heals by acknowledging, admitting it was never supposed to happen in the first place. So now I'm just going to talk about the Sabian symbols which are affecting us, right? So we've got the sun and the moon at the 26th degree of Cancer. So the Sabian symbology is this guests are reading in the library of a luxurious home. So let us sit with this image for a while because it's gorgeous and uncomfortable in equal measure. A luxurious home, not your home, someone else's. You're a guest and you're reading, accessing wisdom, knowledge and beauty, but in a space that belongs to someone else. The library is full, the home is wealthy, the setting is refined, luxury, and you don't own any of it. The wisdom here is about who gets access, who gets to sit in the comfortable chair and read the ancient texts and feel cultured and safe. This is about inherited privilege, emotional privilege, not just material. Some people grew up in homes where feelings were welcome, where the library was open, where wisdom was passed down from generation to generation like good furniture, and some people grew up in homes where the library was locked or didn't exist, or where books were used as weapons rather than windows to open you up and to guide you, right? So this symbol teaches that the knowledge you need already exists. It's in the library, but you might be accessing it as a guest, meaning you don't feel entitled to it, right? You don't feel like you earn the right to the emotional intelligence or spiritual psychological intelligence or any other intelligence, right? You feel like you don't deserve your own self-understanding to the kind of deep psychological, spiritual, any other knowing that can transform lives, your life. Maybe because your family didn't model it, maybe because you were taught that knowing yourself is selfish, that reading about your own psychology is navel gazing, a waste of time, that therapy is for weak people, and especially in countries like the UK where we're told to repress our emotions, right? But this eclipse says, absolute rhymes with colours to that, right? All of it, no cap, honestly. But the programming runs deep. The body connection here is the mammary glands, the breast, the lips, a source of mother's milk, the first nourishment, the place where feeding and love became intertwined for every human being on the planet who was breastfed. Obviously, when we're typically fed with a bottle, we're still held close to the parent's chest, right? So this eclipse touches the most primal physical connection between parent and child, mother and child. If your relationship with nourishment, food, love and comfort and safety has been complicated, this eclipse is going to activate that. Your chest might feel tight, you might cry more easily, your relationship with eating might sift and change. Pay attention, your body's library is open too, and what this symbol reveals about this eclipse is deep. You have access to wisdom that wasn't originally yours through therapy, through study, through the kind of brutal self-honesty that this eclipse demands. You can sit in the library of emotional intelligence even if your family never built one. You can be a guest in wisdom's house until you hold your own. That's the manifestation of the solar eclipse, and what it offers. Not tearing down the old library, building a new one, yours with your name on the door. Now I'm going to talk about the midhaven at the 26th degree of Libra that has the Sabian symbology of an eagle and a large white dove turning into the other. So at the very top of the chart, the midhaven is our public reputation, career and life direction, and an eagle and the white dove turning into each other are utterly two different birds, transforming into each other. The eagle is power, vision, predatory precision. The dove is peace, gentleness and spiritual purity, and they're not choosing between them, they are becoming each other. So this points to us, allowing our darkness to become our light and our light to become our darkness, not in a way that, does harm to ourselves and others, but in a way that, not transcends it, transmutes it, changes it into something more positive. So the square from the sun and the moon to this midhaven means that this isn't philosophical. We're meant to practically use this energy. This is about our actual career, our public face and status, your what do you want to be when you grow up reality. The eclipse is demanding that you stop splitting power and hiding your power for peace in your professional life. Stop believing you have to be either the eagle, aggressive, dominant, winning, or the dove, nice and accommodating and people pleasing at work. The mutation happening here is integration. Can you be powerful and gentle at the same time? Can you serve both your career and goals and compassion, especially compassion and empathy for yourself? That's the question, and the eclipse won't let you dodge it. He wants you to answer that, right? So it rules the vascular system of the skin, the blood supply to our visible self, what shows on the surface. So during this eclipse, your skin might literally, show what you're going through stress breakouts, flushing, sensitivity. Your visible self is reflecting your internal transformation, and the eagle dove mutation at the midhaven carries implications for anyone in leadership positions. The old model of leadership, ego only, dominant, predatory, alpha, is dying. The new model requires both talents and tenderness, wisdom, compassion and leadership, right? Beta and alpha energy, but in a compassionate way. So if you manage people, parent, children, or hold any position of authority, the Sabian symbol is speaking directly to your leadership style, asking, can you make the tough call and hold compassion for those affected? Can you set the boundary and keep your heart open? And the midheaven says you don't have to, choose. You don't have a choice anymore. Both birds live in you. Let them merge, sow them both, let them combine, let them unite and be them. So Venus is at the 12th degree of Virgo, which has the symbology of a bride with her veil snatched away. So this one is going to sting. Venus, love, beauty, values, what you think you deserve at the degree of forced revelation. The bride isn't choosing to lift her veil, it's snatched, it's taken away, removed by force or circumstance before she's ready. So the semi-square from the eclipse to Venus means that this force unveiling in love isn't separate from the emotional earthquake happening in Cancer. They're connected. The eclipse cracks open your emotional foundation, your core destructive habits, and simultaneously the veil gets ripped off whatever romantic and other illusions you've been hiding behind. Maybe it's the illusion that your partner is who you need them to be. Maybe it's the illusion that you're happy single when you're actually lonely. Maybe it's the illusion that you don't deserve better. Whatever veil you've been wearing in love, it's coming off and not on your timeline, and it rules the abdominal aorta, the main blood vessel carrying life force through your gut. So trust your gut and your intuition during this eclipse. It knows who loves you and who's performing love better than your head ever will, right? So we have the Black Moon Lilith at the 3rd degree of Sagittarius, which has the Sabian symbology, two men playing chess, right? So two men playing chess, and Lilith is trying in this eclipse, right? This isn't, about casual gaming. It's warfare in miniature. Every move calculated, right? Every piece is expendable. Lilith in this degree says your exiled anger knows exactly where to strike. The eclipse cracks you open emotionally, whilst Lilith whispers the strategic truth you've been afraid to acknowledge. You know who hurt you, how they did it, and what move comes next. And the body connection, the iska, where you sit burns grounds, this literally where you've been sitting on rage, suppressing it, hiding it to keep the peace. Your body remembers, and during this eclipse window, notice where you suddenly see the pattern, the 3-move checkmate that's been running in your relationship for years. The trying makes this clarity flows naturally. You're not forcing strategy, it arrives. Use it not for revenge but for freedom, for your liberation, right? Know the game, then stop playing it, right? Vista is at the 3rd degrees of Aries, so this has the Sabian symbology. A cameo profile of a man in the outline of his country. So again, connecting us to, how our nations, our religions, our family influence us. And these are not all bad influences. This is not what it's about. It's about realizing, that sometimes our families say what is truth, but they don't do the truth. And sometimes we have to distinguish how the difference. And sometimes we have to take their words of wisdom and not what they actually do. Because if we followed what they were doing, we're not going to be honest and balanced human beings. So the trine from the eclipse to Vista connects sacred devotion with identity formation, and this Sabian symbol shows the individual becoming inseparable from their landscape, from their environment. You are the path, the territory you came from. And Vista asks, what are you devoted to that's actually just inherited geography and dysfunction? What commitment did you make because your family, your culture, your country demanded it, not because your soul chose it? The eclipse in Cancer, which rules our home, our lineage, our belonging, meeting Vista's flame in Aries, our self-identity, independence, creates friction between collective devotion and individual fire, right? So the cerebellum connection, the brain, this is our body's autopilot, the unconscious coordination that keeps us upright, right? During this eclipse, notice what devotions you've been performing in autopilot. What flames are you looking after, tending to, what aren't actually yours? This trine offers flow. You can redirect your devotion without destroying your identity. Separate yourself from your country's outline and find your actual shape. So Pallas at the 29th degree of Pisces, which has the symbology, a prism. So the trine from the eclipse to Palace, the tightest of the three trines, brings strategic wisdom through refraction. A prism doesn't create light, it reveals what was always there. White light splitting into spectrum hidden colours made visible. Palace offers pattern recognition, genius during this eclipse. So what looks like a single source of pain, the mother wound, the abandonment, the rejection and betrayal, is actually multiple wounds stacked on top of each other, all at a different frequency. So the eclipse's emotional chaos meets Palace's ability to separate, categorize, put in order and in a list and understand. And this rules the toenails of the right foot, and this is brilliantly specific, the very edge of your foundation, our feet, what Pisces ruled, and we've got Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, right? So, the foundation, the core habits, what touches ground and that lasts throughout our life, whether they're healthy or destructive. And, the feet, we barely notice the toenails until they're infected or something like that. And during the eclipse, Palace shows you the individual components of your inherited emotional patterns, right? Not, for instance, just saying I have abandonment issues. It's more like, here's the fear frequency, here's the same frequency, here's the coping mechanism you built at age 7, and you need to dismantle it, right? And the trine means the analysis flows. Trust your ability to see clearly whilst feeling deeply, both at the same time. So this eclipse is really wanting us to use our right and left brains in unison, and our strengths and weaknesses in unison, and look after the adult and our inner child in unison, and our shadow and the light, right? So now I'm just going to talk a bit more about the Nakshatra wisdom, the rhythm through the fire. So as I said, it's happening in the Lisa Nakshatra that rules the 16th to the 30th degree of Cancer, in Pada 3, that rules the 23 to the 26 degrees of Cancer. So the deity, as I said, is the Naga, the serpent gods, holders of hidden wisdom, and the power, the Sakti, is the power to inflict poison or healing, reminding us once again of the dual nature of the earth. The water gives life, takes it away. The wind helps, things grow, but also too much can harm us. So everything in earth is duality, right? So the animal of this Nakshatra is the male cat, which represents independence, night seeing, and how we can land on our feet after life's chaos, and the symbol is the coiled serpent, and the Dharma is the righteous duty in cosmic order, right? So once again, the serpent's dual nature. Elisa can be the most misunderstood Nakshatra because people fear the serpent, right? We can fear wisdom in the same way, and if with new information, we like our comfort zone, we get overwhelmed, we shut it out, we go into the Neptune energy of Pisces to escape into our addictions, toxic habits, So it sees this Nakshatra what others hide. It knows what you're not saying. It strikes when threatened, the serpent, like the snake, but can also heal with its venom if properly used. So this eclipse in the Lisa Pada 3, the Aquarius Pada ruled by Saturn, brings the serpent's wisdom through detachment, structure and collective consciousness. The poison is the emotional truth that's weaponized through righteous detachment, boundaries that become wars, using independence to avoid genuine connection. The healing is authentic emotional structure, routines, boundaries that breathe, detachment that allows intimacy in without codependency, right, without enmeshment. So the Sakti, the power to poison or heal, is under the spotlight. The ability to use the same substance, words can be used to hurt people or to heal them, for destruction or for cure. Everything in nature and in our human emotion field and capabilities. Our emotional truth is like this. Expressed without skill, it's poison, as I said. Expressed with consciousness, it's medicine. And during this eclipse, your emotional truth will come out, whether you're ready or not. The question is if it emerges, comes up. How is it going to show up? Poison or in a healing way for yourself and others? Will you weaponize, use it as a weapon, your pain as a weapon, or will you transform, alchemicize it into healing, changing the weak into strength, the unforgiveness into forgiveness and all of that, the jealousy into praise, So the serpent shed skin, and serpents don't gradually shed, they split, they crawl out, they leave the old skin in one piece, completely intact but utterly abandoned. And this eclipse, we are being asked that to remember that we're not just working on ourselves or making progress, we're splitting open and crawling out of the new. The old skin, your old emotional patterns, self-destructive behaviours, relationship and patterns, or inherited trauma responses or codependent strategies, it all gets left behind, not piecemeal, but bit by bit, but all at once if you're willing. And don't get me wrong, everything's just not going to wave a wand and you're going to be healed, but it's saying, to write them down and to make progress, by changing your daily habits, getting yourself out of situations that keep you trapped, right? So the male cat symbolism represents independence, it doesn't need a pack, pride or herd, other people. It has night vision, it sees in the darkness what others fear, it always lands on its feet, survives the fall, cleans itself, is self-sufficient in maintenance, right? And purrs when content but scratches when cornered. And this eclipse asks, can you be like the cat, independent without isolated, self-sufficient without being closed off, affectionate when it's genuine but fierce when boundaries are crossed, right? So part of 3, the Aquarius influence, the third party of Elisa, carries Aquarius energy ruled by Saturn. So this part that seeks us to detach, to understand the collective consciousness and humanitarian vision, but through emotional honesty, not spiritual bypassing or people pleasing. Saturn demands structure and boundaries, Aquarius demands freedom and truth, and together they create the ability for authentic relating without codependency and investment. So if you're in a relationship during this eclipse, part of 3 asks, can you maintain your individuality whilst in a partnership, in a relationship? Can you be emotionally honest without making it a performance? Are your boundaries actually protecting you, or are there walls keeping intimacy out, right? So if you're single, part of 3 asks, is your independence genuine, self-sufficiency, or is it a fear of vulnerability dressed up as freedom? And can you be alone without emotionally being frozen? So Saturn's rulership means the emotional revelations, truths that come up during this eclipse require you to structure them. You can't just feel and release, you must build something from what emerges, what comes up. Aquarius demands you take your private emotional truth and use it for collective healing. Your mother wound isn't just yours, it's generational. Breaking your cycle breaks the pattern for everyone who comes after. So to integrate this energy, the serpent doesn't apologize for its nature. Remember, it doesn't make itself smaller to comfort others. It knows its venom is also its medicine. This eclipse in Elisa gives you the serpent's clarity. Know your nature, know your power, know the difference between protecting yourself and poisoning others. Use your venom wisely, right? So, also during this eclipse, because it's Cancer, subconscious moon energy, right? Pay attention to your dreams during this eclipse, especially between the 8th and the 16th of August. The moon rules both Cancer and dreams, as I said, and during the eclipse, the veil, the line between consciousness and unconsciousness is thinner. So common dream themes during Cancer eclipses are houses, dreaming about houses, especially childhood homes, flooded houses, houses with too many rooms, mothers, grandfathers, maternal figures, babies, children, pregnancy, water, ocean floods, drowning, swimming, serpents, particularly cold or shedding skin, kitchens, food preparation, feeding others, basements, hidden rooms, discovering spaces you didn't know exist, and The dreams are not random. They're your unconscious processing what your conscious mind can't handle. Write them down immediately upon waking. Don't just, interpret them yet. Just record, as I said. Things, some of you will be able to act on things straight away. Some of it will take time, and that's okay, So the meaning will become clearer over the 6 months for some of you, of the eclipse cycle. Just, note things, record them, write them. So how do you manifest, through this crisis that forces new infrastructure, routines and boundaries, right? So solar eclipse, as I said, plants seeds for 6 month cycles. This one plants seeds for emotional changes in our emotional routines, boundaries, basic systems and infrastructure, right? That can actually hold you, rebuilding ones that can hold you, all of you, not just parts of you, not just the people pleasing parts of you, all of you, the parts that you hide and away. So Cancer eclipses, you don't manifest, make real through visualization and vision boys. You manifest through crisis that forces change and the practical actions to bring the change that follows. So the eclipse doesn't ask what you want to create, it asks what needs to collapse, to go, to die, so something real can be built. What false foundation, core destructive habits need to crack and break and go? What pretend home, systems, friends, relationships need to be left behind, evacuated, so you can find your actual home, right? So the building blocks, what you will be building or should be building during the 6 month cycle, is emotional boundaries that are not walls, the ability to ask for help without saying, a relationship with your own needs that isn't apologetic, a home, internal and external, that nourishes instead of drains you, the ability to nurture without self-sacrificing and martyring yourself, and relationships and connections based on choice, not obligation and false responsibilities, right? And of course there's some relationships that unfortunately the false responsibilities and we have to keep up to an extent, right? So the process is demolition from the 8th to the 16th of August. The old emotional routines and boundaries will begin to crack. What you have been calling home reveals itself as inadequate. Feel the grief of that, don't rush to fix. The clearing period from August to October, remove the rubble, end relationships that require you to be small, leave spaces that demand that you perform, clear out anything that costs more than it gives, right? And number 3, your foundation, your core habits, October to December, with Pluto and Saturn both stationary direct in that window. You lay new foundations, core healthy habits slowly, carefully, based on your actual needs, not inherited, passed down ideas of what home should be. The building phase, January to February 2027, the new structures, routines, boundaries that you have decided to make start to rise and be practiced, and you keep on getting up. After each failure of doing these routines, some days you've got 10 minutes to meditate, some days you've got 10 seconds. The key is doing it. So, you may start new relationships during this time, new boundaries, really enforce new abilities for intimacy, deep closeness without codependency and investment. And by February 2027, the 6 month cycle completes. You have something real now, something that can hold you if you work towards it. It's not magical thinking, it's practical reality and actions, right? So in terms of the numerological truth, 26 or the 26th degree of Cancer, right, where the moon and the sun are, Sabian degree, 2 and 6 equals 8. 8 is power, not the perform power of Leo or the strategic power of Capricorn, the quiet structure power of I know who I am and what I'm worth and don't need to prove it. 8 is the number of cycles of karma, cause and effect, of what goes around comes around. 8 is the infinity symbol, standing on its side, right? And when it's upright, it's endless flow that knows how to hold form. And in tarot, 8 is the strength, right, or adjustment, right? Not brute force, the strength to be gentle when you're capable of violence. The strength to stay open when closing would be easier. The strength to hold the tension without collapsing or exploding. And this eclipse at the 26th degree of Cancer reducing to 8 says, you're being given power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, but power always requires responsibility, always demands you use it wisely. The serpent Elisa Natsakra knows this. Power without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. So the medicine is trusting that you're strong enough to be soft. You don't need the armor, protective covering anymore, the ego defense mechanisms, right? The people pleasing ones or any other ones. The power this eclipse offers is the power to be vulnerable and survive it, because you build that inner core and you learn to respect and love on yourself and give yourself the things that you want others to, not because then you go on to the night stern of validation in a way that, you know, that supports you, but it's just not your main source. Other people are just not your main source of love anymore. You know, it wants you to be honest and withstand, endure the consequences, to set new boundaries without apology, to be yourself without apology, to be authentic. That's number 8 energy, that's strength. That's what's available if you're brave enough to claim it, right? So in terms of the tools and the practices that you can use, you know, somatic body-based practices during this eclipse, water rituals, because Cancer after all is a water sign. The eclipse asks you to work with water literally. Salt baths, Epsom salts and sea salt to clear energy. Swimming to process, you know, grief through movement. Crying, actual crying, that performative sadness, but the full body release that comes when you stop you know, hiding and holding other people's, you know, holding yourself into people please, and just finally let out all of that emotions, you know. So stand in the shower and let water run over your crown chakra, the top of your head. Imagine old patterns washing away, right? In terms of breast, heart work, Cancer rules the breast and chest. Place your hands over your heart, feel your heartbeat. Ask, what am I holding there that isn't mine, right? What grief lives in my chest that I have inherited? Gentle massages of the breast tissue. For all genders, everyone has breast tissue, not sexual but healing, releasing stored emotion from the body's most vulnerable, you know, the front, the chest. So you can also use nourishment, food as medicine. Cook something from scratch, feed yourself with intention, not clean eating or diet culture, actual nourishment, feeding that sustains you, that fills you up and heals you. Maybe make your grandmother's or family recipe, you know, grandmother's soup, whatever, baked bread. The act of preparing food with care is Cancer medicine. Feeding yourself is mothering yourself. Practice setting boundaries. Cancer's challenge is boundaries, as you know, has been said many times throughout this, right? So practice saying no to small things. No, I can't make that meeting. No, I'm not available that day. No, that doesn't work for me. Start small. Build the muscle. By the time you need to say the big no, you would have practiced, you know, the no. So in terms of emotional release techniques, try the rage ritual, you know, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith medicine. With Lilith trying the eclipse, your rage wants to express itself, not at people, but through practice. Scream into the pillow, or go out in your car and scream, hit a punch bag, read that paper, throw ice cubes at the wall and watch them shatter. The rage is not dangerous, it's data. It's showing you where your boundaries were violated. Listen to it. You know, maybe have a grief ceremony. Create intentional space for grief. Light a candle, play music that makes you cry, let yourself fall apart in a contained, held self way. Grief needs a witness, even if you're witnessing yourself, you know. Journal about it after. What comes up? What did you need to release, right? And the mother wound meditation. Sit quietly, visualize your mother or primary caregiver. See her as a child. See her wounds. See how her wounds become your wounds and how her mother wounds became hers and mother before that, and so on. See how it goes and visualize yourself. See your wounds. Say aloud, I release what isn't mine to carry. I keep what's mine to heal. You're not fixing her, you're separating what's yours from what is hers, or whoever your primary caregiver or caregivers were. You're separating yourself from all the crap that's not yours but are other people's, right? But, you know, taking accountability for your own pain. So, in terms of your creative expression, art as processing, paint, draw, write poetry, make music, not to create something beautiful, to move emotion through your body and, onto an external medium. The Cancer eclipse wants expression, and the biquintile descendant says make it visible. So maybe keep a dream journal, keep a notebook by your bed, write dreams immediately upon waking, because you may have a lot of them, like I said earlier, about home and fourth house stuff. So the eclipse window will bring powerful dreams, as I said. Don't interpret them yet, just record them. Patterns will emerge as you write them and study them, throughout the months. Writing prompts for your eclipse processing. I'll just give you a few so you can ask yourself, what did home mean in my childhood? What does home mean now? What am I protecting by staying small? What would I build if I knew no one was watching? Who taught me that my needs were too much? What would change if I believed I deserve care and attention, right? So partnerships come under pressure, right? Fourth house stuff, especially family ones during this eclipse. It will test every relationship, especially the one you have with yourself. Not to destroy them, but to reveal what's real. So in romantic relationships, what gets activated is codependency. One person may overfunction and the other underfunctions. Emotional work imbalances. One person does the feeling for both. Unspoken resentments, years of I'm fine and saying things just like that whilst not actually being fine. Enmeshment, where you can't tell where you end and your partner begins. And performed harmony, looking good whilst feeling bad. The eclipse demands tell the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, such as I've been resentful about, or I feel like I'm carrying the emotional weight of this relationship, or I need something different. The Venus semi-square means you might not get the response you want. They might get defenses. We do. Humans don't like truth. That's why we live our lives in our comfort zones for the most part. They may not understand, say it anyway. Real partnerships can handle hard conversations. Fake ones crumble, and that's the point of this eclipse, Repair or rupture, survive or die. Eclipses cause ruptures, breaks and splits, that's their job. But ruptures are not the end if you know how to repair. The formula is deceptively simple. I see what happened, I see how it affected you, I take responsibility for my part, and here's what I will do differently. Not saying just I'm sorry you feel that way, that's deflection. Wearing an apology mask. Actual repair requires being specific, accountability, taking responsibility, and change behaviour. Saturn's trine to the eclipse means repair work done now will hold, it will become part of the new foundation, core healthy habits, Do not skip this step in intimate relationships, right? In friendships, this eclipse might reveal friendships that are actually just habit, people you've outgrown but kept around because leaving feels mean, friends who need you to stay small to feel big themselves, right? The medicine is to know it's okay to outgrow people, it's okay to need different things. Loyalty doesn't mean staying where you were not nourished and looked after and where you was just tolerated rather than being celebrated and accepted, right? The South Node in Leo releases old performances, including performing friendship when it's dead. So in family relationships, Cancer is family, as I said, fourth house, right? And this eclipse hits family relationships dynamics the hardest. So what may come up? Well, the family scapegoat, the person who gets blamed, that you've been playing or whoever that person is, the golden child expectation that you or someone else can't sustain and do any longer, the parentified child pattern becoming parent to your parent, the generational trauma you've been carrying without choosing, the family secrets that have been hidden that may come out, though we don't talk about that family rule that's killing you and everyone else. So this eclipse says you can love your family and set boundaries, you can be loyal and protect yourself, you can honour your lineage, your family family line and refuse to carry their unhealed trauma, and in self-partnership, the most important relationship, as I've been saying throughout this, is the one we should all be having with ourselves, yourself, and this eclipse asks, do you trust yourself? Do you keep promises to yourself? Do you advocate, speak up for your needs? Do you mother yourself the way you mother others, right? And the practice is for 6 months, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for caring for, Would you let someone you love go without sleep, food, rest and joy? Then don't do it to yourself, right? If you wouldn't do it to someone else, look after your needs. Sleep is very important. So to look after yourself, as I said, Cancer rules the stomach, chest, digestion and emotional eating. I know a thing or two about that, and this eclipse affects how you nourish yourself, right? So what to eat. Comfort foods that are also nutritious, not just junk food as self-harm, but actual food, soups, stews, warm foods, Cancer is nurturing, breads, foods your grandmother may have made, the ancestral connection, meals prepared with intention, cooking as ritual, dairy if you can tolerate it, moon-ruled food, water-rich foods such as cucumber, watermelon, celery, lettuce, rocket, all of that. What to avoid, emotional eating to numb yourself. If you're eating to not feel, stop and feel first. Foods that cause inflammation, dairy, gluten, sugar, if they trigger you, alcohol, which is a depressant that will increase the emotional responses, caffeine overload, your nervous system is already activated, and make some changes. Like I said, sleep, prioritize it. 8 hours plus is possible. The moon rules sleep, and during the eclipse your body needs extra rest for processing. Reduce your screen time, especially social media. The eclipse is internal work. Constant external input blocks the process. Have some alone time. Schedule it, even if you are extroverted. This eclipse needs solitude, being alone. Block out time when no one needs you for anything, right? Movement, gentle walking, swimming, yoga, not punishing workouts, but ones that allow you to be embodied, that you feel in your body. Tai Chi, movement that helps you stay present, Pilates, nature, get outside or listen to nature sounds if you can't. Go outside barefoot if possible. Cancer connects to the earth's nurturing. Let the ground hold you, In terms of more self-reflection questions that you can ask yourself during this eclipse, you can ask, what am I calling love that's actually just fear of being alone? What am I calling loyalty that's actually just the inability to leave, What boundaries have I been afraid to set because I think it makes me cruel? And that's a big one, we don't want to be cruel. Generally, we're very loving creatures, human beings, but we get heartbreak, trauma, we can do some horrible things, but ultimately, we all want to be loved by someone, and we don't want to be seen as cruel to at least one person, at least, or an animal for some of you guys, I know it goes like that, no comment. So number 4, what do I actually need that I've been too scared to ask for? Whose trauma am I carrying that isn't mine? What would home feel like if it were actually safe? Where am I still seeking permission to exist fully? What would I do if I knew I deserved care? Who benefits from me staying small? What am I protecting by keeping this pattern? And to integrate it, this eclipse, think about what cracked open during this eclipse window, so really pay attention to the 8th to the 16th of August, right? Think about the truth that comes up for you, what truth came up for you that you can't unsee now? What relationship revealed itself as unsustainable, long-term and toxic and that needs to end? What part of you wants to come home? What are you ready to build instead? Journal on these, voice note on these, voice record, voice note to yourself, right? Don't rush, the answers will come. Be gentle with yourself. So, to talk a bit more about the 6-month arc, eclipses are not single events, right? They're 6-month pulses with the beginning and ongoing integration, right? So pre-eclipse, late July, so let's say 20th of July onwards to the 11th of August, the approach, of the eclipse, you may start feeling the energies 2 weeks before the actual eclipse, right, on the 12th of August. So sleep disruption, old memories coming up, even if you're trying to avoid them through drugs or alcohol, your other methods, and you just can't get rid of that, right? They keep on surfacing. Nothing that you do, you can't escape them. It's not wanted, but they are appearing without being called and stopped. So you may find yourself crying at adverts, picking fights about nothing, being triggered, being suddenly furious at your mother or primary caregivers for something that happened in 1998 or before then. And this eclipse energy is building. Think of it like a weather presser before a storm. The dreams intensify, the body speaks louder. This is the preparation, not the breakdown. So the 8th to the 16th of August is the event horizon, the point of no return. The 3 days either side of that eclipse on the 12th of August are the most intense. This is when revelations happen, the truths come out, conversations can erupt, decisions can crystallize, become more clear, and the foundation, your core destructive habits can crack. And the moon going into Leo at 1:37 a.m. on the 13th of August, just 7 hours after the eclipse, adds the urgency, the private cancer processing, suddenly demands public expression. Expect the unexpected in career, the Midhaven square, right, and in love because of the Venus semi-square to the moon and sun, and family dynamics because of the Cancer stellium with the moon, sun, Hygeia and Mercury and Jupiter, all in Cancer, right? So don't make permanent decisions during the exact window if possible. Feel first, as I said, decide after. And post-eclipse from the 17th of August to October, integrate the energies, right? The dust will settle. What was revealed during the eclipse window now needs processing, conversation and structural responses, right? And, responses that you think about, write things down. That's why I said journal, voice note. Saturn's trine means the work you do in September and October has staying power. This is when you book the therapy, have the follow-up conversations, make the actual changes to your living situation or relationships. The eclipse cracks things open, and autumn is when you rebuild. So the solar eclipse in Cancer is part of a broader eclipse season, right? So the nodal axis with the south node in Leo, the north node in Aquarius, tells a story of moving from individual performance to collective belonging, and the eclipse is just another chapter, right? And the subsequent, the following eclipses on this axis will continue the story. So just think of August 2026 as the starting event and the inciting incident. In a film, the moment the protagonist, the main character's world changes and the real story begins, right? So eclipses, belongs to a Saurus family, as I said. A series of eclipses occurring every 18 years, 11 days and 8 hours roughly. So cast your mind back 19 years ago. What was happening in your life in August 2027? If you, some of you may have been, maybe born after them, but yeah. So what emotional core destructive habits were being laid or destroyed? Or you can just, if you are, you wasn't born in August 2007, think about, look at your family tree and think about the things that was happening in your family before you came along, the themes that echo, not incidentally. The spiral goes upward, not in circles, but the resonance, the connection, the similarity is there. And 19 years from now in 2045, you'll look back at August 2026, no, 2026, yeah, 2026, and see it was the beginning of something you couldn't have imagined from the inside it, right? So often, we understand life and its changes backwards, right? So in terms of managing your energy and protection, not everyone experiences eclipses with the same intensity, but there are some factors that increase sensitivity. You may be a highly sensitive person, have Cancer, Sun, Moon or rising planets at the 24th to the 28th degree of any cardinal sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or in the 1st, 4th, 7th and 10th or 11th houses, right? You can have current life transitions going on, moving job, changing relationships, grief, all of that as well. So how this eclipse affects you is dependent on that as well. As I said, you may have HSP traits, highly sensitive person, empath, people who feel others' emotion intensely, and those in helping professions, absorbing others' energy, so healthcare and stuff like that. You may have moderate sensitivity because you were born in the water sign Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, who have planets in the 4th, 8th and 12th houses, and you may have moon dominated charts, a lot of planets in the 4th house, so a lot of aspects involving the moon. Fire and air dominant charts may have limited sensitivity, and if you don't have a lot of water placements, you may not feel this as strongly, but again, environmental factors may mean you do. Or if you have strong boundaries already established and you're far on in your healing work, it may not affect you in a way, like you may become more aware of things that need to change, but it won't overwhelm you as much. So practice energetic boundaries. Visualize a boundary, not a wall, a semi-permeable wall that allows some things through. You can feel compassion without absorbing pain. You can witness suffering without taking it on. Practice saying internally, this is your pain, I can see it, but I'm not carrying it. I can help you with it, but it's not mine. Salt baths, as I said, Epsom salts for 20 minutes if you've got a bath. Imagine what's not yours washing away. Grounded, as I said, being grounded. Bare feet on earth if you can, hands in soil, physical contact with ground. The eclipse is emotional chaos, and ground yourself in material reality and say this is a protection practice. No is a complete sentence. No RSVP required, no explanation needed, just a no, right? So ultimately the core message of this eclipse is, you have been building your life on foundations of core destructive habits that you didn't choose. Emotional patterns can be inherited, passed down from people who inherited them, from people who inherited them. So we just keep on, passing on these toxic things, and we do pass on some good things. Like I said, sometimes we have to pick the sense out of nonsense and do what our parents and people in our families say, not what they do, to really, not everything they say may be crap. Sometimes we can be like, I'm not listening to you because your life's a mess, but they may speak the wisdom, but it's hard to practice wisdom, which I've struggled with and which we all struggle with. We all procrastinate. It's harder sometimes, the simple things, eating right, going to bed on time, these things that can help us live a healthy, balanced lifestyle can be the hardest things to do, because we have survival strategies from childhood and other traumas, and we build these walls and defense mechanisms, right? Childhood required survival strategies, so did heartbreak and other events. Our beliefs about love and safety and home could have been formed before we had the language of what love and safety and home meant, and this eclipse says it's time to rebuild consciously, deliberately, based on who you actually are, not who you were conditioned to be from your childhood, heartbreak, rejections and all other traumatic events, right? It won't be comfortable. Rebirth, change never is. The serpent doesn't shed its skin gently. You will split open, you will crawl out raw and tender, you will leave behind patterns that felt like your identity in relationships and friendships and whatever, even lovers and intimate relationships, partnerships, for some of you careers, and for a while you won't know who you are without them, without the things you give up. But here's what's on the other side: a home, internal and external, that actually fits you. Relationships based on choice, not obligation, and dependency, codependency, emotional honesty without apology, the ability to nurture without martyring and self-sacrificing yourself, power without corruption, softness without weakness, boundaries that breathe. The eclipse doesn't give you this, it gives you the crisis that forces you to be for yourself, and it's up to you whether you build it for yourself, right? It's up to you if you practice. Remember, it's not easy. You will have to pick yourself up a million times. You will get things wrong. Remember, it's your journey, and it's a journey, right? Not just the destination. So the cracking open is the gift, right? And yes, sometimes it can be hard to see as a gift because of the pain, the suffering, the horrible things people said and done to you. And no one's saying, invalidating your experiences of emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical, any other type of abuse. It is saying, right, what you build in the space that opens up when you make the choice to actually consciously choose the life you want to live, then what grows there, it's up to you. So you have 6 months, start now, and This is the crisis that forces a new emotional infrastructure, right? Routines and boundaries. The mother wound is exposed, and the lie that you've been calling safety is obliterated, so you can finally build something real. Our emotional world is crumbling, and that's actually the point of this eclipse, right? It isn't breaking you, it's knocking down, wiping out destructive habits and relationships that you built to survive childhood and other traumas in your life that are not supporting your actual adult life now. So rebuild yourself this time to support your needs, not the performance. Give up pleasing everyone and stop ignoring your actual needs, right? So I'm Imani, your holistic astrological karmic life coach, and this has been my take on the super new moon total eclipse in Cancer on the 12th of August 2026. Take care and see you next time.